Hello, my name is James McCool. I am the owner of PaydirtDFS.com, as you can see on the screen. We're going to be going over the two-gamer tonight, the main slate for NFL, as well as both of the showdowns. We're probably going to spend a little bit more time on the two-gamer today because I think that more people are interested in that. Both showdowns are pretty gross, so we'll mostly stick to the two-gamer. It's been a pretty good week so far. We had a 20K hit for a subscriber on Thursday, which is great. Shout out to Elite Break. 7,000 for another subscriber. Shout out to TJ on the main slate. And overall model's been good. So hoping to just kind of carry that on to this Monday night main slate. I'm not a huge fan of two gamers, but where there is edge, we must play. So we're going to see if we can find some edge here. I have up a couple tabs here. We have up the Paydirt main page. I just want to say really quick that we do have a new About Us page. If you have been wondering about what Paydirt is about and you just haven't checked out the site, this is a good place to go and check some things. I built this up. Please clap for me. And then we're going to take a look at different contest simulations, optimizers, stuff like that. I also have up Fantasy Life here just so that I can kind of reference some stuff. One of the things, because I know people are going to ask me about DeAndre Hopkins, We'll talk about it when we get there, but looking into him, I'm not super stoked on it. So first thing that I did as we're looking at the contest sims, let's talk about the two-gamer first, because I think the two-gamer is what people care more about. I went over to the contest simulations over at Paydirt and decided to run just a small, very sharp contest. These are kind of things that I play. If I'm going to play tonight, I'm going to play the Wildcat, so this is what I'm focused on. Worth noting, really quick, if you have not used the contest sims, it will show you first. It's going to show you the winning lineups from the contest sim, right? So it's going to tell you all of the lineups. I think there's 100 here that are representative, and then you can download 1,000. So looks like we have a lot of Seattle stacks. We got a lot of Geno Smith. We have a lot of Noah Fant. It's going to be probably centered around Seattle stacks, I think. One thing that I added recently is winning frame statistics and flex exposure statistics. So you can see the minimum salary projection, ownership, fantasy, GPP projection of any lineup that won in the simulations, as well as the max and the average. So this is going to be good for you to set kind of some thresholds when you're optimizing on your own. Setting some thresholds for projection based on Paydirt projections, ownership, keeping it within this range. This is going to be something that allows you to build portfolios with a little bit easier macro management. Also some flex exposure stuff, which is just saying running backs are most valuable, wide receivers are second most valuable, but tight ends are still used. So let's take a look at exposures here. So we have my cat yelling at me in the background, but specifically what we have here is at the overall level, the edge looks like it is mostly on Geno Smith and Noah Fant. Like both these guys look like they're way undervalued for this slate specifically. Geno Smith shows up in 67% winning lineups. Noah Fant shows up in 45%, only 14% ownership projection on Noah Fant. So that's really, really attractive. We also have a handful of other guys that are relatively interesting, right? Like Tony Pollard is the number one running back showing up. People likely are not going to be doing that because they think that Tennessee is going to lose, aka they don't want to be using Tony Pollard. But the contest sims say that he's really, really valuable. If we sort this by negative edge, we see the least valuable players. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek Hill only shows up in 10% of optimals. That's kind of a big deal, right? Like models over at Paydirt think that it's such a massive downgrade having Huntley at QB that Tyreek Hill ends up being significantly overvalued. He does still end up being in some winning lineups, as does Sam Laporta, as does Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they are all significantly overvalued. So just starting the slate, and if you just wanted to blanket avoid these guys, I think that would be fair. If you don't, just make sure that you're pairing them with highly positive leverage players. Like, it's fine if you want to pair Tyreek Hill with Geno Smith, right? Geno Smith is way undervalued. He's about 35% undervalued. Therefore, that cancels out the 35% that Tyreek Hill is overvalued. So you're fine making that combination. Just try not to have these three players together. Like, we really don't want to do that. We can go through and we can look at each individual position as well. So Tony Pollard is the highest overall positive edge for running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs is the highest overall negative, but based on exposure levels, like these are still the four guys that you want, right? So again, if you go with a Geno Smith stack, there's nothing wrong with going with Jahmyr Gibbs. There's nothing wrong with going with David Montgomery. But you just have to be reticent of the overall edge that you have. Looking at wide receivers, again, the largest is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown is negative, and Tyreek Hill. It might be because these guys are expensive as well. Like the models would rather pay up at running back or something like that. The highest overall edge, if we're looking at wide receivers, is Jameson Williams, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba at 17% positive edge. So a lot of Seattle here. Again, that's going to pair really, really well with DK Metcalf. I think that what we are seeing here, obviously, is that the models have a big lean towards stacking Seattle rather than stacking Detroit or Miami. You'll notice that there is basically no Tennessee stacks. Like if we go to quarterbacks, like Levis is there, but he's, he only shows up in 5% of total winning frames. Jared Goff and Geno Smith are really the guys that you should use. And Tyler Huntley isn't even here. So it kind of paints a really easy picture. Like we want to stack Seattle. If you can't stack Seattle, then go ahead and stack Detroit. But be careful of having Amon-Ra St. Brown and make sure that you're pairing things correctly. That's kind of the way that we're going to be looking at this two-gamer. Overall, like based on what we just saw, I probably want to play it, especially if we're going to be getting guys like Geno Smith at 31% owned. Like if I can get Geno Smith at 31% owned and Jared Goff is going to be 45% owned, super into playing that showdown. That's really, really good edge without trying too hard. Or two-gamer, yeah. So let's take a look at the showdowns now. So this is the contest sims, and I'm going to break this down the same way that I usually break down the showdown season. So let's take a look at captain exposures first. As we are looking at it, the top overall positive edges here are Tajay Spears, Miami Dolphins, and Jason Sanders. So having Miami Dolphins and Jason Sanders as a combination here, that should tell you all that you need to know about the Tennessee side, right? And it should also tell you all that you need to know about where captain is looking at on this slate. This is an ugly showdown. Like none of the Tennessee Titans guys project well. The Tennessee Titans quarterback doesn't project well. The Miami Dolphins quarterback doesn't project well. The only player that actually has a relatively good projection is Tyreek Hill. And we don't want to use him most of the time because the quarterback play is so bad. So what you're probably going to end up wanting to do is use like Tyreek Hill plus the defenses plus the kickers and like a kicker and a running back. The largest negative edge at captain is Devon Kane and Tyreek Hill. Don't yell at me about not being able to pronounce his name. I'm not even going to try. But both those guys are negative edges as captains. But then when we go over and we look at the flexes, we see that Devon Kane is still a positive answer in terms of flex. Ooh, man, is Tyreek Hill still negative? Oh, yeah, we don't want to play Tyreek Hill at all. It just says that he's overpriced. At 11K, Tyreek Hill is overpriced on the slate. The models would much rather dedicate that salary to Devon Kane and Tyler Huntley, who is probably going to be relatively underowned as people are trying to fit in Tyreek Hill. So that's a really spicy take from the models. Biggest positive edges here at flex are Huntley and Tajay Spears, with Devon Kane here and Malik Washington. Biggest negative is Tyreek Hill. So if you're going to play this showdown, it looks like the models want you to fade Tyreek Hill, which is very, very spicy. We'll go over and we'll look at ownership and duplication mitigation. So ownership here, above 300%, not above 320. I think there's probably going to be decent duping here. A lot of people are going to use a Kane plus Huntley plus Tyreek Hill plus, Calvin Ridley or Tony Pollard. We can see that the main flex core is a Kane, Pollard, and Hill. Those guys show up in 90+% of lineups, all in the flex. And then we have some Huntley and some Levis, both of those guys again in the flex. And then it's just completely spread out. So avoiding any one of these three guys, aka Tyreek Hill, is going to give you a huge boost to your dupe mitigation. You likely won't have to care at all about being unique if you just fade Tyreek Hill. So that seems like the way that Paydirt wants to go about things here. The models over here, the algorithms. So I'm inclined to follow that. I do not think that I will play this showdown. I think it sucks. If I was writing this, then what I would say is the volatility here is super, super high. It's going to be impossible to tell any individual Tennessee wide receiver apart from one another. People are going to want to play DeAndre Hopkins because of his fantasy score last week, but Calvin Ridley did it the week before. Nobody did it in week one. Very possible nobody does it in week 4 either, right? So getting back to the 2-gamer really quick, I think that if you're looking at the Tennessee side, I think that DeAndre Hopkins is going to end up getting like more ownership than he deserves, and Calvin Ridley probably less than he deserves. But overall, that situation is just such a crapshoot that you really just shouldn't play whoever the popular option is for Tennessee. It just doesn't make sense. It's a bad play, so try to avoid that. Overall for this showdown, my personal lean is probably going to be something like play Pollard and Devon Achane as your main pay-ups, and then just focus on defenses and kickers. I don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring here. I think both teams maybe score 1 touchdown, probably not much more than that, and it's going to be mostly ruled. It's going to be like a 13-16 game in the end with 1 touchdown from each, and hopefully those touchdowns come from Achane and Pollard. Moving on to the better showdown, Seattle-Detroit one. So we're looking at, that's flex. We want to look at captain really quick. So looking at captain, so the highest overall edge is going to go to Jason Myers. Jake Bates is there as well. Kickers still being undervalued. That doesn't surprise me. And then Jameson Williams. So Paydirt models have been really heavy on Jameson Williams over the start of the season. He's just been really, really solid overall. And his role is that of having the most valuable targets. He hasn't supplemented anybody, really. He's just good in his role. He's playing that deep ball role, and that's really what we want in Showdown. So models have really liked Jameson Williams. Another guy here, obviously, that we're focusing on for the 2-gamer is Noah Fant. He looks to be undervalued in the captain as well. We're looking at overvalued. It's mostly just Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Him and Jared Goff both. The models heavily want you to stack Seattle, as we see most of the positive edge at captain comes from Seattle, and one of the Detroit ones is Jake Bates, right? A kicker. So if you're going to go with Detroit, you should focus on Jameson Williams and not Amon-Ra St. Brown. When we go and look at the flex, Geno Smith is the top overall positive edge in flex. He's just going to be undervalued overall, both on the 2-gamer and in the showdown. So utilizing him as kind of like a base lock in your flex makes a lot of sense. After him, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are both positive edge options in the flex, both relatively undervalued. They were neutral in the captain, so as long as you're avoiding Amon-Ra St. Brown and or Jared Goff, probably both, I think that you're going to be in a good spot. Highest negative edge here, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just similar to Tyreek Hill, just don't play him. The models much prefer other pay-ups to these 2 wide receivers for different reasons. Tyreek Hill is having to deal with really bad quarterback play, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is having to deal with Jameson Williams kind of taking quite a bit of the upside out of his game. So there's just better plays to make. Playing DK Metcalf makes more sense in combo with Geno Smith. Playing Jared Goff and Jameson Williams together with Jahmyr Gibbs, those guys, that's going to make a lot more sense. Let's go quickly take a look at dupe mitigation stuff. So this one is going to have really, really low dupes. The highest overall ownership in the cash optimals is only 273. That's really, really low. You're not going to have to worry about dupes basically at all, especially if you fade Amon-Ra St. Brown. So if you see the flex score here, it's just Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you have a wide spread starting with Jared Goff, 45% owned, and then Dave Montgomery, and then everybody 32% or less. So if you fade Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're not going to have to worry about dupes at all on this slate. This is a slate that I would be much more interested in playing. I haven't looked at the contests, but if the contests are better for this one, I'm in. This is a really, really good showdown. I like it a lot. My lean on it, obviously, is going to be sticking with the Seattle side. I don't have to worry too much about the Detroit side. The only Detroit pieces that I really want are Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams. If you are going to stack Detroit, just fade Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that gets you all the uniqueness that you need. So these are some pretty good showdowns. I like these a lot. If you have not checked out Paydirt yet and you're interested in this kind of stuff, Paydirt is a site that is built on game theory and finding ways to create advanced models for every kind of user. Please go try it out. I think that you'll find it cool. I think that you'll find it interesting. And if you don't, then you can yell at me on Twitter. That's fine too. But I hope that somebody collects a trophy and let me know if you do, and come find me in the Discord. Again, that's something you can find over on the site, and just join here. Free to join. I'm tripping over my words a lot. But yeah, should be a good set of games. Hopefully somebody from the Paydirt crew takes down the 2-gamer and the better Showdown. See ya.